Three experienced crew members set out on a routine medical mission, a flight they had done countless times before. But on this quiet evening, something went terribly wrong. A devastating crash, a silent field, and an unimaginable loss. What caused this tragic accident? Was it just a freak occurrence or something much deeper? As investigators comb through the wreckage, one question lingers. What really happened in the skies that night? To uncover the truth, stay tuned to the full story. But first, if you're enjoying our stories and want to support the channel, hitting that like button really helps us out and means a lot. You'd be doing us a huge favor. On a quiet Monday evening in the rural town of Owen, Kentucky, a devastating event unfolded in the skies, leaving a small community in shock and grief. What began as a routine mission for a medical helicopter crew quickly turned into a tragedy that no one could have anticipated. A crash that claimed the lives of three dedicated crew members. The helicopter, a Bell 206, had been dispatched from Air Evac Life Team's base in Grant County, Kentucky, on what was supposed to be a standard medical transport mission. They were en route to pick up a patient in need of urgent medical care, a mission they had completed successfully countless times before. But this time, something went terribly wrong. As the helicopter flew through the calm evening sky, it encountered an unexpected obstacle. According to early reports from the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, the helicopter struck a guy wire, an almost invisible steel cable used to support utility poles. With no time to react, the collision sent the helicopter spiraling out of control, crashing down into a field off East Highway 22, about 80 miles from Louisville. The crash was heard by nearby residents who rushed to the scene, hoping against hope that they might be able to help. But as they approached the wreckage, the sight that greeted them was harrowing. Flames flickered from the downed helicopter, and debris was scattered across. Was thrown across the field. Despite the efforts of first responders who arrived soon after, there was little they could do. The three crew members on board, pilot Gail Alleman, flight nurse Bethany Aiken, and paramedic James Welsh, had perished in the crash. Word of the accident spread quickly, and soon the entire town was buzzing with the tragic news. For those who knew the crew, it was a gut-wrenching loss. These were people who had dedicated their lives to saving others, often putting themselves in dangerous situations to do so. Their mission that night had been no different. They were headed to help someone in need. Instead, their lives were cut short in a cruel twist of fate. Air Evac Life Team, the organization for which the crew worked, was quick to release a statement expressing their sorrow and heartache. Air Evac Life Team is heartbroken to share that three crew members from AEL Base 133 perished in a helicopter accident in Owenton, Kentucky today, the statement began. It went on to emphasize the bravery and dedication of the crew, noting that they were in the middle of an important mission when the accident occurred. Our primary focus now is on supporting the families who were impacted as well as our team members, the statement concluded. The loss hit particularly hard in the small community of Grant County where the crew was based. These were not just co-workers or colleagues, they were family. The grief was palpable as co-workers, friends, and neighbors struggled to come to terms with the magnitude of the loss. In the tight-knit world of emergency responders, each person plays an integral role, and the absence of any one individual is deeply felt. James Welsh, the paramedic who was one of the victims of the crash, had a reputation for going above and beyond for his patients. Known for his calm demeanor under pressure and his ability to bring comfort to even the most anxious of patients, Welsh was someone who took immense pride in his work. His dedication to the field of paramedicine had earned him the respect and admiration of his peers. Just days after the accident, a GoFundMe page was created to help support his family, and within hours, it had already raised more than $16,000 from people eager to honor his memory. Flight nurse Bethany Aiken was equally beloved by those who knew her. She had spent years caring for patients in some of the most stressful situations imaginable, but her compassion never wavered. For her, nursing wasn't just a job, it was a calling. Friends described her as someone who could make anyone feel at ease, even in the most dire of circumstances. She was the kind of person who made others feel safe, no matter the chaos around her. And then there was pilot Gail Alleman, the seasoned aviator who had spent countless hours in the air ensuring the safe transport of patients and crew. For Alleman, flying was second nature. He had been at the helm of helicopters for years, and his professionalism and skill were unmatched. He had trained new pilots, passing on his knowledge and ensuring that they too could handle the challenges of flying in often unpredictable conditions. As the community mourned, the investigation into the cause of the crash was just beginning. The FAA and the National Transportation Safety Board (NTSB) were quick to mobilize, sending investigators to the crash site to begin the painstaking process of piecing together what had happened. The wreckage would be meticulously examined, and the investigators would gather every piece of information they could: radar data, maintenance records, weather reports, and even the pilot's medical records. Their goal was to understand not just how the crash occurred, but why. The NTSB made it clear that their investigation would be thorough and that no stone would be left unturned. They would look at every aspect of the flight, the human factors, the machine, and the environment. But even with all of their expertise, the investigation would take time. A preliminary report was expected within 30 days, but the final report, the one that would determine the probable cause of the crash, could take up to 2 years. In the meantime, the families of the crew members were left to pick up the pieces. For them, the waiting was excruciating. Every day without answers felt like an eternity. The questions haunted them. Why had this happened? Could it have been prevented? What would their loved ones want them to do now? In the days following the crash, memorial services were held for the crew members. Hundreds of people gathered to pay their respects, sharing stories of the lives that had been lost too soon. There were tears, of course, but there were also moments of laughter as friends and family reminisced about the good times, the moments that made these individuals so special. For many, the pain of losing a loved one in such a sudden and tragic way was overwhelming, but there was also a deep sense of pride in knowing that they had died doing what they loved, helping others. It didn't make the loss any easier, but it brought a small measure of comfort. As the investigation continued, more details began to emerge about the flight path of the helicopter and the moments leading up to the crash. According to radar data, the helicopter had been flying at a low altitude, likely to avoid the dense clouds that had rolled in that evening. Visibility was limited, and the crew had been navigating through challenging conditions. But they had faced worse before. They were experienced, capable professionals, and no one could have predicted the tragic turn of events that would follow. The guy wire that the helicopter struck was not visible to the crew. It was one of those hidden hazards that pilots are trained to be aware of, but in the darkness and with the low visibility, there was simply no way for them to avoid it. The impact had been sudden and catastrophic, giving the crew no chance to recover. For the families of Gail Alleman, Bethany Aiken, and James Welsh, the investigation offered some answers, but it also brought more questions. They wanted to know if something could have been done differently, if there were protocols or safety measures that could prevent such a tragedy from happening again. And as the NTSB report slowly took shape, they hoped that it would provide them with the closure they so desperately needed. In the meantime, the community continued to rally around the families. Fundraisers were held and donations poured in from people all over the country who had been touched by the story. The GoFundMe pages for the crew members continued to grow, with people leaving heartfelt messages of support and condolences. The tragedy had also sparked a broader conversation within the aviation and medical communities about the safety of air medical transport. While these missions are critical, they are also inherently dangerous, often requiring crews to fly in challenging conditions and at low altitudes. The crash had served as a sobering reminder of the risks these professionals take every day to save lives. As the months passed, the families of the crew members slowly began to find a new normal. The pain of their loss would never go away, but they took comfort in the fact that their loved ones had made a difference in the world. They had dedicated their lives to helping others, and in the end, they had given everything in service of that mission. And though the investigation would continue for many more months, the legacy of Gail, Bethany, and James was already clear. They were heroes, not just because of how they died, but because of how they lived. They had touched countless lives, and their memory would continue to inspire those who knew them for years to come.